Well, welcome to Katie's Corporate Classroom, where today's corporate training is a one on one with Susie Q from Reinvention Warrior podcast. Susie is a reinvention warrior, the author of Your Corporate Exit Strategy. She's got a cancer exit strategy, she's got a marriage exit strategy. Any type of strategy you need on exiting, Susie Q has it for you. What she doesn't have and what she's here for today is a strategy for just kidding. Today, we're going to talk about raising personal vibration for enhancing team coherence. And teams can be a partnership. Teams can be a leading in corporate setting, in life setting, if you have children and a spouse, you're leading a team. And so today's training is useful for anyone who could use a little bit of good vibes. Susie, before we get started, I'd like to invite you just to kind of relax into your body and take a few heart-centered breaths, just allowing yourself to breathe in through your heart, imagining the air coming in, and exhaling, allowing your heart to set the rhythm natural for you, breathing in through the heart. And when you're ready, if you haven't opened your eyes, please open your eyes. Personal vibrations. When I think of vibes and a metaphorical expression today, I think of what the kids are now saying, it's giving, right? And if you're familiar with the Gen Zs, and then Susie shaking her head, so that it's
Yeah.
giving. Back in my day, it was like good vibes only.
Mhm.
Kelsey Aida has a podcast, High Vibin'. Vibrations are often thought of a metaphorical expression, but they are something that truly can be measured. And so when we hear the kids say that you're a whole vibe, which is what I like to hear the kids say about me, or at least the adult kids anyway, we're talking about the quality of the thoughts and feelings and attitudes and behaviors that are surrounding us. What do you think of when you think of vibrations and high vibes? Like, what emotion comes to mind for you for a good vibe?
I don't know, I just think of energy. It's almost like your presence. So, yeah, it's about the energy that you bring.
Yeah. I like that you said it's the energy you bring, because as you'll notice, our vibration is not determined by what is taking place in the external environment, although
Mhm.
it can be affected by it. And there's other modules where we talk about how a husband and wife having an argument and how that container of energy will shift your own energy, but it doesn't have to. And really, this is an invitation to become aware of throughout your day of what are the qualities of your thoughts and feelings, because those qualities of the thoughts and feelings are creating that energetic field around you. And we can learn to shift those inner rhythms and vibration in response to the external environment. Um, and the quality is of those thoughts and feelings is measurable. And that's the little device I'm wearing here today. And when we talk about coherence, we're talking about that flow state.
Mhm.
So when we operate in a higher vibration, we align with our heart values. Susie, I imagine you do a lot of value work.
Yes, lots of value.
Yeah. And allowing yourself to take a few heart-centered breaths while we're talking in this module and just being aware of your rhythm. You're going to experience these higher quality of emotions as you become aware of what you're feeling. We are more caring and kinder to others. We, ironically, the more um, self-aware we become, the less self-absorbed we are. And
Mm.
so you can be very self-absorbed in recognizing, where is my breath right now? What are my feelings right now? But recognizing that you bring them into the room and they're yours to own throughout that room. Become more self-secure and able to respond to challenging situations with more flexibility, this was the key phrase that stood out to me when I first learned this: greater maturity and affording better outcomes and less stress accumulation.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a greater capacity here to make attitude adjustments. Can you think of a time where perhaps you were caught in the drama, so to speak, and an immediate high vibration was just lowered right when you walked in the room?
Hmm. That's a good question. I can't think of a specific scenario, but I can, like, I'm very curious as to the being less self-absorbed. That has me very intrigued
Mm.
because I would think that through self-awareness, like, would it decrease your self-absorption or increase it? Like, that's interesting.
Mm. Well, let's talk about some of the outcomes with the higher vibration since you've mentioned that. This isn't necessarily the it's really about admitting we don't have answers, seeking advice and ideas from others. Higher
Mhm.
vibration outcomes allow us to have more compassion for others and extend more latitude. I love this phrase, compassionate latitude, that they
Ooh, I love
use at Heart Math. And it's having an attitude of giving some latitude to someone else.
mhm,
The problem with love your neighbor as yourself is that we don't love ourselves. And so becoming aware, staying in a higher vibration, bringing the attitude that you want to have and maintaining it allows you to listen without judging or interrupting. It allows you to help others feel heard simply by having the right energy as you're listening.
mm,
Allows you to be open to different viewpoints. It's not necessarily the bubbly, overly enthusiastic life of the party. I think oftentimes when we think of high vibes, we think of that person that just works the room. But this is more of that inner attitude of almost a quiet humility, but a peaceful feeling. Like what emotions come to mind for you when you think of some of the high vibration outcomes that are on here?
I didn't think of an emotion, but as you were saying that, I was thinking it was like you're calibrating. Like we're internally calibrating to that vibration, right? To that higher energy. So that's the first thing that came to mind. I didn't think of an emotion. So that's,
Mm.
yeah, I was just thinking calibration. It's like you're calibrating yourself.
Do, any of these higher vibrations that are on this screen, like, resonate with you as an area where maybe you notice resistance? I know for me, um, laying aside ego, was a tough one.
Yeah, that can be a tough one. The one that I resonate to, though, that you were saying was a compassionate latitude. Like
Mm.
that really resonates a lot to me. Um, let's see. Yeah, I think really the laying aside the ego and maybe listening without judging or interrupting. That might be another one too.
I really like to use this practice in while listening. Know what you don't have to close your eyes to bring in breath to your heart and to stay present.
Mm,
And it allows us to be able to stay in the vibration, and it's fun to watch the room shift with you as well.
mm,
Um, and so then let's talk a little bit about lower vibration.
mm,
When the vibration drops, and the number one way I see a fifth line, like both of us have our frequency drop, is when we take something personally.
mm,
We tend to experience frustration, impatience, overwhelm, can lead to tension, arguments, and drama, can create a toxic environment and undermine team harmony and coherence. We can often feel disconnected, off centered, out of sync, and shut off from others due to our own judgments and blame. Oftentimes, we see excessive worry or a lack of care because of being too preoccupied with our own feelings. Operating
Yeah.
at a lower vibration is often when people fall back into old patterns of unwanted attitudes and behaviors. And
Mhm.
that's really what heart math is offering is as you heal and that autonomic nervous system, you start to be able to just make that your pattern,
Mhm.
but the it is at a nervous system level. When you think of a last time that your team, any type of team that you've been on has been out of sync.
Mm.
Was there more tension? How did you relate to one another? What do you notice about that experience versus a time when the vibrations were higher?
Oh man, so many things I can think of in a team setting. Um, Definitely frustration is a big one when things are not in sync or you just can't maybe communicate with them, like where everyone can be on the same page or same level. Um, so, yeah, I would say those are definitely the big things that I can think of when it's like off balance in a team setting.
Mm. I always notice how people relate to each other, and I think the way that we might label this would be lack of trust.
Oh, yeah.
And um, there's a fearful emotion that happens when there's impatience or overwhelm.
Hmm.
Ju
Absolutely.
Yeah, under judgment and blame, there's also some fear that there won't conflict resolution is something else that's interesting. We feel like there has to be a resolution
Hmm.
sometimes when, simply allowing the inner conflict, the inner vibrations, the conflict itself will simply have its own solution versus a resolution.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that all being true. And I can think of situations where that's happened. So, yeah, I agree with that.
So there's some vibrational shifts. Our vibration is not static, it fluctuates throughout the day. And HeartMath has tools to help us shift that vibration. And part of it is that we're often just not aware. At times, our behaviors, emotional responses, and attitudes can change radically depending on the level of our vibration, causing us to feel that we are two different people in the same body.
Hmm.
And each of us, and I think it's important that we think of each and every single individual has their own baseline vibration and how they tend to operate.
Hmm.
And the vibration is how you show up, which is why I love to think of the Maya Angelou people remember how you make them feel.
Mhm.
Consider the following in how you show up. And as you're doing so, take a few heart centered breaths. Do you tend to get along with others well, or do you tend to keep people away at an arm's length? Are you tolerant but still grumbling inside? Do you buddy up with someone to gossip or have an undercurrent of irritation or worry but say everything is okay?
Hmm.
Or are you calm, patient, and optimistic? Do you tend to have compassionate latitude when someone is having a tough day? The quality here of the your inner environment, the energetic environment, determines how well you manage our emotions, attitudes, and behaviors. Any of those that stood out for you as I was going through them?
I was trying to remember all of them. I was like, okay, I'll remember my answer for that. But no, I feel like I'm very patient and compassionate, especially if someone's having like a hard time. Um, I feel like I'm very optimistic too. So I'm always like the hope. No, I always joke around that I'm the hope dealer, and I'm always optimistic and hopeful. And so I feel that when others are feeling challenged, I want to be a support or I want to be the uplifter. And so, yeah, I can resonate with that.
Hmm. There are techniques that help us stay in this coherence. Sometimes when others are struggling and we want to be the hope or help dealer, that our vibration sort of shows up and matches their own. And so one of those techniques is the heart coherence and personal vibration. Shifting into heart coherence actually increases the heart brain synchronization, which can make it easier to raise our vibration. When we say that the heart and brain are not in sync, or they are in sync, it is not a metaphor. It is measurably different. And studies show that when they're more in sync, the perception improves, reaction times improve, and the ability to discriminate information also improves. And so we're going to go through an exercise about how your vibration can affect you and your team. And this is the vibrational awareness and depletion to renewal grid. um,
Hmm.
and
That's a
it is
mouthful.
it is a mouthful, and it is in a handout. So if you're playing along and you've downloaded this PDF that I've attached, you can print it out. But you can also just draw a grid for yourself on a piece of paper. And you'll notice that this is the part that I have to go back and study. So I have better knowledge when I do this presentation for my class. But essentially, we have a horizontal grid here. We have cortisol, and the cortisol arrow is all the way here pointing towards the depleting, lowering vibrational emotions and attitudes. And when we're in this quadrant here, we're looking at needing a recharge. And on our vertical line, we have the horizontal line is hormonal response, which is the cortisol that I mentioned. Yes. And then the other side is the DHEA. And the DHEA is a renewing hormone. It's one of those youthful hormones. And both of them are actually produced by the same precursor hormone. It is that inner emotion and inner attitude and response to the stimulus that is determining whether or not cortisol gets produced or DHEA gets produced. I think I did all right on that one. And so we can see that at the bottom here, we're in parasympathetic, low heart rate, relaxation, and those can be renewing energies, which is producing the DHEA. And we can have high heart rate and be in the sympathetic and still be in the renewing higher vibrational emotions and attitudes quadrant, and producing DHEA. So when I think of the example of two people jumping out of an airplane, one person is feeling very excited, the other person is terrified to death. Both of them are going to have elevated heart rates. They're just internally experiencing a different emotion about them. And this is a great tool for checking in with yourself and being able to raise awareness. Back to your question of how do I become less selfish if I'm becoming more aware of myself? And it's about really cleansing the signal that you're giving off and checking in with what is the signal that I have today? And what signal do I want to be broadcasting? And if I don't want to broadcast this signal, how emotions affect the hormonal system and the ability to self-regulate is essentially what this chart is showing us. And so hormones and self-regulation go hand in hand. And when we're self-regulating our emotional response to a stimulus, we're producing renewing hormones. Cortisol isn't always bad, but long-term production of cortisol is going to leave us feeling depleted and needing to sleep, so is how I call that.
Yes.
When you think of an example that you would place in an attitude or feeling at the top of that box, what are some of the high vibration renewing attitudes that you feel?
Mm. Mm. I don't know. The first thing that comes to mind is confidence. as an
Mm,
attitude.
yeah. I think of appreciative,
Mm,
gratitude.
yeah, gratitude is a big one too, yeah.
Mhm. Another one that comes to mind recently that, I've been exploring is acceptance and the
Mhm,
incredibly high vibration of joyful acceptance for something that once was not so joyful nor even easy to accept.
mm, I like
And
that.
yeah, and really thinking about how you raise a vibration around something that typically would be a memory that would elicit a lower vibration. What are some of those feelings you would associate with the lower vibration, quadrant?
How much time do you have?
We've got 9 minutes left to be precise.
Um, Anger, frustration,
Mm,
those are some of the big ones I can think of.
mhm,
Sadness.
mm. Yeah, maybe helpless versus the hope
Yeah,
dealer.
yeah, yeah.
Mm. The second tool that we bring after looking at some of these vibrations and feelings is how I tend to act and behave and the effect that it has on others.
Mhm.
And although we're here talking about teams in today's training, I like to think of my dog as being a really great reflector of how I'm feeling oftentimes.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how do you tend to act or behave when you're feeling a higher vibration?
Mm. I'm very joyful. I'm very energetic. Um, yeah, I'm just, like, engaged. I'm, like, super engaged.
Mm, yeah. I think of being really open to ideas where sometimes I can show up, feel it in a not realizing I'm in a lower vibration and being very closed off to something else. So like listening and being a team player for me are things that show up when I'm in a much higher vibration.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Authenticity is a very high vibration.
Mm. And that's super important to me too.
Mm.
It's for us to be authentic, integrity, you know.
How do you, when you think of how you tend to act and behave in a lower vibration, and you don't have to
Oof.
answer this, yeah, what do you feel? I know for me that there tends to either be some type of inauthenticity I want to bring or some blame perhaps that I wanna have.
Yeah, I would say blame feels like a good one, or maybe almost, sometimes like self-pity, I guess, like, "Oh, I'm in
Mm,
the wrong, whatever that vibrational feeling is.
yeah, yeah, like the withdrawal,
Yeah.
the lack of care or self-love. Self-love says, "I just love you."
Ooh, yeah. Self-love gets
Um,
sabotaged sometimes.
yeah,
Yeah.
mm. I find that when I'm in a lower vibrational state that I tend to, act and behave in a way that creates problems for myself that didn't exist.
Mhm. Oh, no.
Mm. Right? Like, "Oh, let me chase this little idea that's really not anything that, I want to actually do."
Right. Yeah, no, that's
Any
not good.
Yeah, anything you notice on the effect it has on your team when you are in a high vibrational state versus low vibrational state?
Yeah, I feel like the times I can think of specifically, it's like it creates a ripple effect, right? Because I tend to be the optimist and the high energy person, or not high energy, but like a high vibration and that hopeful, enthusiastic person. When I'm not, it creates a ripple effect because everyone else is like, wait, you're not at that peak. So if you're not, maybe we need to like mellow down, so I just feel like it creates a ripple effect in a team environment.
Mm. And I think this is why it's so important to bring this tool of spot checking, which is what we're talking about today, is once you've filled out where you're what you're feeling, what you're not in the high versus the low, you now can spot check throughout the day. And spot checking can be, I'm going to the bathroom. What's my inner how
Mhm.
am I feeling? What am I always find that those are my opportunities to check in with some appreciation.
Yeah.
Um, for me, you're a reinvention warrior. I've reinvented myself where I only owned what fit in my car. And I'm always so grateful for so much of the beauty that's around me. I don't live in a concrete jungle anymore, so I always take some time to be appreciative of the greenery around me.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
spot checking is just taking quick inner pauses throughout the day to assess your emotions and attitudes and where you might be on the grid. So again, if you are able to download the PDF, if you're listening to the training, you can grab it there. Otherwise, you can also just draw out your own grid and getting an idea of what every one of those feelings are in that spectrum for yourself allows you to continue to check in. And there's no better way to self care and self love than spot checking with your breath, checking with your heart, sending yourself some really nice energy and vibrations.
Mhm. Yeah, I resonate a lot with the nature piece. And like you said
Mm.
about the greenery, sometimes it's just stepping outside, letting the sun hit you and, you know, remind you to get out of that maybe frame of mind that you're in or whatever that emotional spot was that you might feel stuck in, but nature has such a healing effect.
Mm. And so does breathing. And that's another one of the, breathing is to live.
Oh, absolutely. I catch myself, like, especially if I feel that overwhelmed feeling, like, I'll just put my hand on my heart. I naturally do it. I don't even recognize I'm doing it, and I'm just, like, taking a deep breath, and just reminding myself, like, "You're okay, it's okay. The stress is there, the overwhelm is there, but you're like you said, you're alive." And, finding appreciation and gratitude and focusing on that is so good. So, yeah, I agree. Those are big staples.
What I appreciate about the spot check tool is also a just a reminder that anytime, anywhere is a good time to just check in with your vibes.
Mhm.
Um, this is this is how ultimately how you become self-aware in service of the collective. We call it at Heart Math feeding the field. What are you feeding the energy field? And as I continue to explore developing my game of status quos coming soon to a shelf near you, one of the status quos that we can do to disrupt the collective is to feed it with more positive vibrational energy so that the positive vibrational energy can find us back. Um, what are some of your main learnings from this training module today, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
Of course. I love the spot checking. I think it's such a great reminder to um, not get consumed in, the routine of things and just the day to day because it's so easy to get stuck in doing versus feeling or that awareness that we were talking about earlier. So I think that that's great. A great reminder to do that. Um, and really just overall is the simplicity of honing in on what's going on internally, right? And recognizing like, "Oh, okay, like this is what's happening." Make myself aware of what's going on and then also take into consideration what that ripple effect is and who else it could be affecting, like especially since we're talking about teams, that our energy, our vibration has a way of impacting others. And so if we can check in with ourselves and realize, hey, okay, now what will this do for the people around me? Like, I think that's such a great way to look at things and a good focus.
And isn't it funny that we are excited to be able to make sure we have a positive impact on others, but really it's about having a positive impact on yourself too.
Mhm.
Self-regulation is just regulating your own vibrational energy, which is um, a way for you to experience life more joyfully. So
Absolutely.
for everyone listening, I encourage you to go out and spot check yourself throughout the day. And when you're taking that spot check, once you felt into where you are, find that feeling that you'd like to replace it with and allow yourself to breathe that in through your heart and go in your mind's eye there. This is the part that I'm adding that's not in the heart math training. So there's my disclaimer. But bringing in a little bit of sports psychology, the mind needs a new memory,
Mhm.
and it can and a lot if you're like me, you can't really picture something unless you've actually experienced it. It's really fun about my energy. That's why I can't make PowerPoints to save my life. It's why I have to pay for them. And when we create a memory in our mind that hasn't actually happened, 95% of the brain does not know the difference between experiencing it and allowing yourself to experience it in the attitude that you want to have, watching yourself have everything go wrong, but smiling and feeling good. And when you picture yourself smiling, your face is going to lift up and smile.
Mhm.
Now you have muscle memory and you're really creating an imprint. When you buy a new car, you see the new car everywhere. You've immediately planted a new memory. And
Yeah.
literally in that moment, you stop seeing your old car. The brain does not look for it ever again until you park in a parking lot and you're like, oh, look at that. I used to drive that car. It literally has to find you to wink. And that is the vibrational stickiness of being able to really heal the nervous system. And what I love about heart math is that you can get a device, you can check and see where you're at. I'm at 2.7 right now. And anything above 1 for beginners is good. I probably need to make it a little bit on the harder level because I'm sure I set it up originally on the easy level. Um, but I encourage people to continue to recognize that you not only can you shift, but you can go to the place that you want to be and you can create memories that don't exist so that your body can find you on the right path to those memories you want to have. So stop looking for the old car. Nobody wants a jalopy. Stop looking for your old bank accounts. And be a better teammate to yourself and watch the teammates around you get better as well. Thank you so much, Susie, for joining me on this training and for everybody that got to listen. I didn't do as bad as I thought I was going to do in that little sciencey section, but I'm sure there's an updated training that you might want to purchase for better information. So thanks for tuning in and check out Katie's Corporate Classroom for another stimulating episode.